Hey everyone, I'm Ashleigh Banfield and this is Drop Dead Serious and it is Mother's Day. I didn't expect to be working today on Mother's Day, but I am actually very happy to be working today on Mother's Day, and I would like to dedicate this episode to Darlene Hamlet and Carly Aylesworth on Mother's Day because we've got big news for you and big news for them. Darlene will not be getting a call from her daughter, Lynette Hooker, to wish her a happy Mother's Day because Lynette is missing and presumed dead in the Bahamas. And Carly will not be able to call her mom, Lynette Hooker, and wish her a happy Mother's Day for the same reason. But I will wish them a happy Mother's Day. And this gift comes courtesy of the United States Coast Guard and the United States Coast Guard Investigative Services, who grabbed Brian Hooker's 46-foot sloop in international waters, hooked that thing up, and towed it into America this morning. It is now evidence in a criminal investigation. And that is very bad news for one Brian Hooker, who says that his wife Lynette just bounced off the back of that dinghy on our way out to the boat, Soulmate, and then he proceeded to bounce right out of the Bahamas instead of staying to help look for her. But now Soulmate is in the custody of the United States authorities. And you know they are going to comb that thing for every piece of forensic evidence and digital evidence and electronic evidence and anything else on board. Because they are building a case. They opened a criminal investigation. And they are building their case. And these guys are good. They are great. I am so happy to be able to show you these pictures and show you that they hooked that thing up and brought her in. Didn't matter that Brian hired a couple of delivery captains to, bring him his boat out of the Bahamas, washing his hands at the Bahamas. So now, not worried about Lynette being there or the boat being there. His asset, he thought, was coming right back to him in the United States. But it's not. Happy Mother's Day to you, Darlene and Carly. So here's what I can tell you. I haven't had a lot of sleep because this has been a 48-hour journey. We had some amazing spies and incredible helpers who allowed us to track this boat all the way from its mooring ball in Marsh Harbour to the Fort Pierce Coast Guard Station in Florida, where it is currently tied up and will be absolutely reamed for every ounce of forensic evidence that it will offer. And I believe it's going to offer a lot. So here's what happened. On May 6th, Soulmate moved off of the mooring ball that it had been on for weeks and weeks since Brian just, picked up and bolted from the Bahamas, while everybody else was looking for Lynette because he said she was lost at sea. Don't know how it happened. Former Marine. May 6th, suddenly, the conch in mooring ball, where Brian Hooker was paying for the rental of being able to hook onto that mooring ball and let Soulmate float in the middle of Marsh Harbour, it moved from that mooring ball to another mooring ball, closer to the conch in and closer to the docks. And I was wondering at the time, now what's going on? I didn't know if maybe it was a less desirable mooring ball, and since no one's on the boat and other customers might want the more desirable, maybe that's why. I wondered if maybe it was getting ready for a sale. Maybe they wanted it closer to shore. Maybe they wanted to just keep eyes on it because it was such a specimen. It's become such a story. Soulmate. I believe a crime scene. I believe a crime scene. Just speculating here. But as it turned out, I may have been right on some points, but definitely the real purpose was to bring Soulmate into the dock, because on May 8th, Wendy, thank you, Wendy, for being so amazing to us and helping us to get this piece of the story. Wendy had her sailboat in the slip next to Soulmate as Soulmate was being provisioned by the delivery captain and the first mate. A delivery captain is a normal kind of job, all right? Like oftentimes they will do these crossings for people. They'll sail their boat or motor their boat across from the Bahamas to Florida or anywhere else in the world. And they will deliver these boats for people. It's not cheap. It's many thousands of dollars, but you don't have to sail it yourself or, do 24 hours at the helm, which is not fun. So delivery captain and mate were hired by presumably Brian or somebody connected to Brian. He's got a sister who helped him out when she was in the Bahamas. I'd like to know more about her. And they provision the boat with food and fuel and water, and they get it ready for, what's normally around a 24-hour crossing. Again, thank you, Wendy, because Wendy also ended up kind of sailing alongside because she was doing a crossing too in her sailboat. But she noticed that they were really booking it, 6.4 knots. And we could see that too because they had their AIS on, which is this marine tracking system where you can see boats all over the place and their movements and their owners and all the rest. And then boom, all of a sudden AIS went off right out of Marsh Harbour. Boop, out it went, which was weird. But this is Brian Hooker after all, right? Master of masking his location and maybe masking the location of his things. The only thing is, and we didn't say this because we didn't want Brian to know this, we were still following him because there's another app out there called No Foreign Land. And it's run by some very, very kind sailors who live aboard and like to have a sailing community. It's sort of a crowdsourced community where you can all sort of check in with each other. And the No Foreign Land was still on. And it was on for quite some time. So we were able to follow Soulmate on its journey. Until about halfway across, that went out too. Which I thought was weird. But okay. That didn't mean we weren't following. Because, dog with a bone. You know me. I have not let this go, and I am not letting it go. In any case, here's where things got hinky. The boat looked like it was kind of headed towards Fort Lauderdale and then started to vector overnight sort of northward. And I wondered, okay, wouldn't it be weird to get into the Gulf Stream and have a little bit of a help along the way, a little bit of a push. Lots of people do that. And then it was a late night. This was, by the way, this was Friday night. So this was May the 8th. I'm doing this on May the 10th. Yeah, it's been a long 2 days. So overnight, boat turns off the No Foreign Land, actually more towards the daytime. But the vector starts turning northward. So I'm like, where is this mofo headed? And I don't mean the captain because he's just a delivery guy, right? He's just a hired hand. But can I tell you a little something, something? As they say in the Bahamas, this is a little sip-sip. Ronnie, thank you for giving me that term, sip-sip. Captain Ronnie told me the word is sip-sip in the Bahamas, but little sip-sip, a little bit of yap-yap, a little bit of rumor. The talk around Marsh Harbour weeks ago was that Brian Hooker was shopping for delivery captains. And I knew that. I did not broadcast that because I didn't want to tip off anybody that this might be happening because it's better that this boat is in American hands at this point. Just given the stuff that hasn't been going on, the forensics that haven't been, mined with the boat where it was, my opinion, better that that boat have its freedom to journey across the Atlantic into the welcoming arms of the Coast Guard Investigative Services because these guys get results, damn it. Like, they're good. They're really, really good. Check their history. They've solved lots of really high-profile crimes. So I didn't tell you 3 weeks ago that I knew Brian was shopping for delivery captains. Something I learned just this morning, though. He was getting turned down left, right, and center. You loser. You loser. Turned down. People do these things normally. It is not weird. But enough people wanted nothing to do with you and your history and your lore. Your lore. Turned down left, right, and center. A couple of guys did take the job. Do not besmirch them. It's not their fault. They're not a part of anything bad. They're not ugly. They're not naughty. They're not in cahoots. It's just a job, right? And boy, were they surprised, I'm sure. I wish I'd seen this with my own eyes. Happened out in quite a ways out. So I can only imagine, let's say, based on AIS, because it was on and off, right? The No Foreign Land and the AIS was kind of on and off and blipping weird. I'm just going to assume, as a mariner myself, that it would go on so that captain and first mate could communicate with family or just let people know their position, because you want to be safe, right? But based on that, somewhere around 40 miles offshore from the United States, my presumption is that that's where they were intercepted by the Coast Guard. I do imagine as well that there was aircraft following Soulmate to keep a beat on where they were, because when they're starting to turn their shit off, Coast Guard's not going to screw around. They're going to scramble and they're going to do this stuff. They're going to keep an eye on something like this. Coast Guard did not lose this boat along the way. Even as it vectored north, they were on it like effing glue. And nobody down below would have known, because the aircraft is way the fuck up there. They can't see them, but the aircraft could see the boat. So anyway, based on, like, again, the positioning of the no foreign land and the AIS kind of blipping on and off, and based on the fact that there was one bitch of a storm last night, like really, really bad. I was watching the weather off the coast, like 30, 40 miles out, and it was brutal. So hats off to the Coast Guard, because it would have been like Andrea Gale shit going on out there, where they're trying to hook this boat up. Are you bored? And you turn on your cherry and you're like, hey, woo, woo, woo. It's basically like being pulled over on the street. But it's a Coast Guard vessel that approaches your boat with loudspeaker and all the rest, and they would board. And I'm sure that this poor delivery captain and his first mate were like, what is going on here? But they would board and they would say, we are seizing this vessel. I don't know what language they would use, but basically they'd say, sucks to be you, but basically we are seizing this vessel as part of an investigation. And then they hook her up, Dano, like tow it in. It's not easy to tow, though. From what I know, it is not easy to just, basically tie lines and tow like I would normally do. It's more formal than that. When this is a law enforcement operation, there's like shit, paperwork, so they're out there, I'm assuming, in this horrible storm trying to get all this done. And that, in my estimation, is what took so long for this Soulmate to make it to the Coast Guard station, Fort Pierce, where it pulled in just a few hours ago, where I was able to get this bitchin' video. Hat tip to the 90s for that little expression. There's a few people I have to thank for helping me get this video. First of all, Captain Lou, bro, I am indebted to you. You're the best. I did not expect you to deliver pictures like this and video like this for Drop Dead Serious. It's just exquisite. This was great. This was what it looked like for everybody in the harbor this morning, watching the Coast Guard escorting Soulmate into the Coast Guard station, which is located inside of Fort Pierce's waterway. And this was amazing. So first of all, I can tell you, just because boats got a beat on this, out in the open ocean and at the entrance to Fort Pierce, there were several Coast Guard vessels that were involved in this. From our own eyes, I can tell you, and from our spies, I can tell you that the Coast Guard cutter Robert Yered, not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, Yered, they had a beat on Soulmate as Soulmate was leaving the Bahamas. And I don't know if they followed him or if they just radioed ahead or whatever it was, but the Coast Guard cutter Robert Yered was in the Bahamas. And I love the fact that Wendy was also watching as Soulmate was taking their direction around Grand Bahama and heading west. And there's this little rock. I don't think it's that little, but there's this interesting rock called Memory Rock. And basically, as you pass Turtle Key, I think it is, it's the last point that you would see before you head into the open ocean and cross to to America, across the Atlantic. I love that name. Like, bye, it's a memory now, as you say goodbye to the Bahamas. And apparently Soulmate went by Memory Rock, and I think that's maybe where the Coast Guard cutter Robert Yered might have picked it up, or at least was watching it along the way. There's another Coast Guard cutter that got a beat on it as well, the Winslow Greaser, the Coast Guard cutter Winslow Greaser. I don't know where that Coast Guard picked up Soulmate, but they were there for the interception, and they would have sent one of their smaller boats out That's how usually, you're not going to bring a big, 80-foot Coast Guard cutter up to a 46-foot sailboat. You'd send out one of the smaller vessels with your personnel on board, and they would have their cherry going, and they'd, board Soulmate and let them know the plan. And then the towing plan would start with that Coast Guard greaser, the Winslow greaser. And I got a snapshot from Darlene, from Lynette Hooker's mom, Darlene. And this is what it looked like when the William Greaser was towing Soulmate towards dry land, towards the American shores in Florida. And so, at some point they transferred the tow line from the greaser, from the Winslow greaser, to what I could identify when it came into port, one of those 45-foot, they're like medium response boats. They don't really have names, and I just saw a number on the back of this one, but that response boat, the 45, tied up next to Soulmate. They put them on the port side. They put Soulmate on the port side, and then they came in side by side at quite a clip, actually. I was pretty impressed. And that's sort of these incredible images that we have. The Coast Guard cutters like basically hanging on to the side of Soulmate and bringing it in to the Coast Guard station in Fort Pierce. And I want to tell you something. I know this based on some of the people who were there on the shore and at the station there. Big shout out to Coast Guard Investigative Services Sector Miami, because so much of this has emanated from there. The investigation, the tracking, the recovery, all of this came from those guys. And they have been busting their asses for the last, we're at beyond 5 weeks now. It was 5 weeks last night. And so huge shout out to them for this. So I also want to tell you that Captain Lou, who was filming this amazing, entrance into Fort Pierce Harbor, there was someone else who was helping me out as well. Michaela, I'm looking at you, girl, standing on the dock and getting these 4K images for me, as well as the Coast Guard cutter did a little turnaround right in front of the dock there. So you can see the back Soulmate, and I love that. You can just see them maneuvering, how easy and like nimble they are. They're just amazing. So Michaela, big thanks to you as well for scrambling real early this morning and doing this for me. Lydia stayed up really late last night waiting because we didn't know when this is going to be coming in. But there's Lydia working so late at night to try to capture images, and then finally at 2 a.m, I know we all just kind of fell asleep and couldn't deal. But big thanks to Lydia as well. But it takes a village. And I want to just say, Captains on Call, you're the best. I can't thank you enough for helping to orchestrate getting all these images of Soulmate coming in under the escort of the United States Coast Guard. This was just fantastic. And just seeing it, like, it's almost like the next best thing to seeing Brian Hooker in handcuffs, seeing his boat in handcuffs, coming in and knowing that it's going to get the full forensic reaming that it deserves, because Lynette Hooker deserves this. This is for her. And it's Mother's Day, and I will give her that. Happy Mother's Day, Lynette. We are getting justice for you. Everybody, taxpayers, people who love you, followers of Drop Dead Serious, everybody who's been watching this, everybody who's been following your story. There are so many people in the Bahamas who care for you and love you. The women who threw the flowers out into the Sea of Abaco in a tribute to you when nobody could find you. And we will find you, Lynette. We will find you. That is going to happen. But this is a hell of a Mother's Day present in a horrible situation for a family that does not deserve to have what's happened to them. The family of Lynette Hooker, who is bewildered and suffering an immeasurable tragedy. This is one bright spot to see the biggest piece of evidence in this case coming into lockup, like coming into impound, and the people who are best at it are going to be doing their level best to make sure that every piece of evidence that's needed is going to come off that boat. Here's what I'm going to be wondering. I want to know if Lynette's navy blue Conch Republic headscarf is on that boat. I want to know if Lynette's aquamarine bathing suit cover-up is on that boat. I want to know if what looked like a black fanny pack that we saw on Lynette in her last photo that we know of is on Soulmate? I want to know. Because if it is, there is no reason for it to be there if Brian Hooker was telling the truth. The way he said it, they left the conch in and out she went. I couldn't, couldn't get her. She just bounced off the back, and the waves and the wind, which didn't exist because we've already proven that. And you're a Marine. Give me a break, former Marine. So how on earth would the things that she was wearing, aquamarine bathing suit cover-up, royal blue Conch Republic headscarf, and the Apple Watch with the powder pink band, how would all those things get on board? We know that the powder pink Apple Watch is in the custody of the police. We know that. We also know that it, used to die. Like the battery was really bad on that Apple Watch, and Lynette's habit was to take it off sometime around dinner time, 6, 7, 8, and put it on the charger. So let's game this out, shall we? Lynette doesn't fall off the back of the dinghy. Duh. But instead, the dinghy makes it back to Soulmate, say around 7:40-ish, 7:45, somewhere in there. It's about a 12-minute ride or so from the Abaco Inn out to where Soulmate was anchored in Ampets Bay. So the dinghy makes it there, and they both board Soulmate, and their electronics hook up to the Starlink that they have there on the mast. And any other electronics, say their phones. And let's say Lynette did what she usually did when she came back from being out in the dinghy all day, according to her daughter, Carly, who spent a lot of time with them on the boat in February, living on the boat with them in February on a vacation. She'd get up, usually go and take a shower, probably downstairs, below deck in the master bathroom. Well, if that was the case, maybe she would take that blue headscarf off and that aquamarine bathing suit cover, and maybe it was just in the bedroom or in the bathroom. And she might put something else on because that thing's all salty from the day of swimming and, being out in Tahiti Beach and the pool and all the rest. And then maybe something happened on board Soulmate. Maybe something happened that has happened before with Brian. He's put his hands on his daughter before, around her neck, charged for it, acquitted by the jury. Allegations that he's put his hands around Lynette's neck before and choked her till she passed out. According to her friend, her mother, photographs that she's shown with bruises on her back. Brian's never been charged with that. But there were plenty of past allegations made when no one else was listening. This was just family and friends, that Brian was beating the shit out of her. Never charged, never held accountable for that, never convicted of that. But lots of stories of lots of abuse from friends and loved ones of Lynette. So what if that happened below deck and this time it went too far? Would Brian have remembered that she was wearing a blue headscarf and an aquamarine bathing suit cover-up? Because when he told the search and fire and rescue search team the next morning what she was wearing, all he said was two-piece black bathing suit. That's it, two-piece black bathing suit. He didn't say blue headscarf, aquamarine bathing suit cover-up. Nope, just black bathing suit, two-piece. Is that because you don't bother to look at your wife or really care what she's wearing or even remember? I hope that's the case, honestly, because if that is the case, then you probably forgot it's in the bathroom. So if those articles of clothing are on board Soulmate, Brian's fucked. I think that watch being on board Soulmate might also be something that Brian might not have realized. If she took it off and put it on the charger like she normally does around dinner time, and then if she died after dinner time, maybe Brian wouldn't have noticed that she wasn't wearing her watch. Maybe. I'm not saying he did that. I'm just saying these are possibilities because his story's not true. So what else happened? All I can hope is that he did forget those things because these people all think, the people I cover in these cases, they all think they're smarter than the rest of us. Brian Koberger thought he was so smart. Fucking idiot. Took his phone to the crime scene, took his car to the crime scene, shut it off. Thought that would work. I sure hope that Lynette took her watch off and put it on the charger and took her blue Conch Republic headscarf on and left it in the bathroom. And her aquamarine bathing suit cover-up, left that in the bathroom too. And I sure hope it's on board that boat because that's going to go a long way to, the thing we called reasonable doubt. If there's ever a charge in this case. I mean, I'm not saying anything. He's not charged. Tick, tock, tick, tock. This has got to be very uncomfortable today. Because guess what? Brian knows his asset has just been seized. The only home he's been living on for the last 4 years, it's tied up to the Coast Guard dock at Fort Pierce in Florida. That's what you call a seizure. A reasonable seizure. That's got to really suck for Brian Hooker right about now. Oh, did you think you were in the clear just because you got on a plane from the Bahamas? No, my friend. When the Coast Guard Investigative Services gets their hands on your case, they're not letting it go. And they're not idiots. And neither are the rest of us. And I'm super curious, how would Brian have received the news, right? Because he's kind of underground. Sighting in Michigan a couple weeks ago, Sacramento, where he said he wanted to go and see his sick mom and his sister lives there. So he's been back and forth between those places from what we can gather. But how would he have received the news that your boat's not coming to where you think it's going to be? My assumption would be that Brian would be in contact with those delivery sailors, the captain and the first mate. My assumption is that they'd have been in contact all along the way, right? Like leaving, provisioning, leaving, setting up payment, making the organization, deciding what port the boat was going to sail to, etc. And my assumption is that those delivery captain and crew said, beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, beep. Mr. Hooker, we're not going to be able to deliver your 46-foot sloop to X location in northern Florida. Coast Guard's aboard right now, and they want the boat. That's my assumption. I wish it could have been a fly on the wall for that. Like, I wish it was on speakerphone and somebody recorded it. I don't know. Because if there is some result from this criminal investigation that yields some kind of a, I don't know, indictment, maybe these things will be made public. Maybe all these details will come out and we will find some of the color involved in this big fucking storm off the coast of Florida last night. I hats off to the Coast Guard, because this is shitty work. This is hard. When you're out in the middle of the ocean and you're trying to hook up a giant bobbing, wrecking ball that could come at you, and it is torrential rain and waves, it's dangerous work. It is really dangerous work, and it is uncomfortable work. It is cold, it is wet, and you're like that until you get to shore. And to that point, may I just say the number of people who have been working tirelessly to try to find justice for Lynette right from day one. Search and rescue, all those guys, fire and rescue, and Hopetown, volunteer organization, please give generously. Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue, totally volunteer organization. They searched and searched. I believe in vain, because I don't believe Brian's story, but at the time, that's all they had to go on. Royal Bahamian Police Force that's had to do whatever they're doing on this story, on this case, right? All of the folks involved with the Coast Guard Investigative Services and the Coast Guard as well. All the investigation they've been doing, all of the work. I'm just assuming just a metric shit ton of paperwork and warrants and search warrants and, maybe subpoenas. I mean, the amount of work everyone is doing to try to find Lynette and find justice for Lynette, it's overwhelming. And so, Brian Hooker, your lies, and I will call them lies because what you said did not happen, have caused all of this for everyone. And the worst of it, what everyone else is going through pales in comparison to what Darlene Hamlet and Carly Aylesworth are going through. Lynette's mom and Lynette's daughter. The hell they are going through. Let's just hope that your boat being seized brought them just the slightest bit of light on Mother's Day. So at the last vector, it really appeared as though this captain was heading towards the Jacksonville area. And I don't know if that was the ultimate destination, Jacksonville. I know that Brian and Lynette have spent time up there before. I looked at their no foreign land and I could see their route and where that boat had been. And it had definitely been in northern Florida, and it had been in the Jacksonville area as well, Nassau County area. So maybe that's where Brian wanted his boat delivered. It wasn't going to Fort Lauderdale, though. And I'll tell you where else it wasn't supposed to go. Fort fucking Pierce, where it ended up. Coast Guard Station, Fort Pierce. Tell you something else that's really interesting about this this seizure and delivery to Fort Pierce Coast Guard Station. The dinghy is not on board Soulmate. And I am not the least bit surprised about this. The dinghy originally was taken to wherever the impound is for the Royal Bahamian Police, but it's in the custody of the Royal Bahamian Police. And at one point, Carly Aylesworth, Lynette's daughter, and her boyfriend Steve went to the Bahamas. They went to Marsh Harbour and Elbow Key. They retraced all of these steps. I was with them. And they told us that the Bahamians, the Royal Bahamian Police, told them they could take the dinghy. They just didn't have a way. Like, what are they don't have a truck. They don't. How are they going to put it in their luggage? They didn't know how to do that. But they were told, you're welcome to take the dinghy. And then sometime later on, that changed. And the Royal Bahamian Police said, no, you can't. Changed their minds. Not exactly sure. Maybe it was a clerical error. Someone said something they didn't realize they weren't supposed to say. You can take the dinghy. Major evidence in what could be a murder. Could be. I'm saying could be a murder. But very interesting. So the dinghy is not on board Soulmate right now. I don't know what's going to happen with that. I don't know if the Royal Bahamian Police would be interested in releasing that dinghy to the Coast Guard Investigative Services. I think it's a great idea. And anyone in the Bahamas who's listening, especially if you're with the Royal Bahamian Police Force, it would probably be a great idea to release the dinghy to the Coast Guard Investigative Services, because they have enormous assets. They have enormous forensic tools at their disposal. They have the entire FBI at their disposal. So if you're really committed to finding justice for Lynette and her mom, Darlene, and her daughter, Carly, it would be a great idea to release the dinghy to the Coast Guard Investigative Services. I also think it would be a really good idea to release the video from the Abaco Inn to the Coast Guard Investigative Services. I have asked many times, of every single level I can, with the Abaco Inn, if I could please see the video and get a copy of it, and have been told no. They have been instructed by the Royal Bahamian Police not to release it, and they're doing what they're told. I understand that. I get it. I'm not sure I understand why, after 5 weeks, the Coast Guard Investigative Services has not been given that video, a copy of that video, shared clips of that video, anything. I don't understand that part. I hope that will be remedied soon. If you're in the Bahamas, maybe knock on the door and ask the Royal Bahamian Police if they will do that. Again, justice for Lynette. Justice for Lynette. There is a mission here, and it's twofold. Find Lynette, and then if there is something untowards that happened to her, prosecute whoever did it to her. That's justice for Lynette. Also want to mention that Carly and Darlene have a GoFundMe to help find Lynette, search for Lynette. If it requires flights back and forth to the Bahamas to look, or at least ask the authorities, press the authorities to let them search. It is a worthy cause. Please think about giving to Carly and Darlene's GoFundMe. It's called Lynette Hooker Missing in Bahamas. It would really help them out. And if they end up having a burial or funeral, that will also help to pay for that. Thank you, everyone, for following along. Thank you for your being invested in Lynette's story. Thank you for being a part of Drop Dead Serious. Don't forget to subscribe. And I'm super appreciative for all the folks that helped us out. Again, Captain Lou, you rock star. Michaela, thank you so much. Captains on Call, oh my God. CGIS, Sector Miami, keep killing it, you guys. I know you're going to get there. I know you're going to get this case right through to the end, the finish line. Lydia, thanks for staying up late. I hope you got some sleeping in on Mother's Day. And Wendy, girl, your video as you were passing Whale Key. Thank you. It takes a village, everybody. And remember this, the truth isn't just serious. It's drop dead serious.